Welcome to another edition of the GreenBaje podcast. As always, that is AJ. He is the Green. I am Ken. I am the Bage. Today is just us. It's just two of us. And we are here to break down some of the stuff that happened in week 2 of the NFL season. AJ, how's it going, my brother?
It's good. Missed quite a bit of action last weekend, but still did see some highlights. So it was an action-packed weekend, no?
It surely was indeed. And I too missed quite a bit on Sunday, but I think I saw enough that we can talk about some stuff. So off the rip this week, again, we are going with our week 2 Blitz, where we're going to look at some of the games. We're just going to take some quick stabs as we run all over the league and give you some interesting picks as to what happened this week. So AJ, as we did last week with the Blitz, who is your biggest winner this week?
I hate to do this thing at the start of the show, but I have to say that my biggest winners of the week right now are the Carolina Panthers. I cannot understand. Up to now, I can't fathom how these men won that game, and in such a convincing fashion too. The fact is, the Panthers are 2-0 after the first 2 weeks, right? And who the hell would have thought that the Panthers would be 2-0 and topping the division at this point? No, the week 1 wasn't too much of a surprise. It was a Donald revenge game, and it was the Panthers. I mean, Donald spent some years in the league already, right? And they got McCaffrey back from injury, and they were playing against a rookie head coach, rookie QB. So, all right, cool. No surprise there. But this week, to beat the Saints, and especially after what the Saints did in week 1, mind you, I can't get too deep into the game because I didn't see it. I just saw a few highlights here and there, right? But the Panthers defense looks really good. Do you know right now that in terms of like points, points given up, points conceded, the Panthers are ranked number 1, averaging only 10.5 points given up in over the 2 games. That's incredible, though. To me, just at this point, And if the game were closer, I would say, you know what, it was a fluke, but it seems like this team has gotten it together a little bit. And I don't even need to go back to look at the odds to know that the Saints were favored to win this game. So just the Panthers winning and the team that they beat, the manner in which they did it, for me, they're the biggest winners of week 2.
Okay. Well, I'm actually a little surprised that that's the direction you in, but I'll come back to speak on what happened with my Saints a little bit later in this same segment. But my biggest winner for this week is one of the teams that won by the fewest number of points. Is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens, having knocked off the Kansas City Chiefs this week, I have to give them their flowers because this is a team that for as long as Lamar Jackson has been their quarterback, they have been perennial playoff contenders. And the one team that they have not been able to get past before was the Chiefs. The Ravens, they had to dig deep. They had to come and really work hard to get past the Chiefs. And they beat them 36-35 on an incredible 4th down play that I know you would have seen it, and they talked about it a lot too with Harbaugh. Harbaugh coming onto the field and asking Lamar, "Do you want to go for it?"
Yeah.
And then it was, "Let's go." So the fact is, everybody is hunting the Chiefs, and the Ravens have been the team that's been closest to the Chiefs every year that Lamar has been there, and they have finally found a way to slay the team at the top. So when I look at that, I have to say that to me, the Ravens are the biggest winners of week 2. And of course, that is also a bouncing back from a heartbreaking loss that they had last week against the Raiders. So now they are 1-1. The Chiefs are 1-1. This game could have potential impacts for seeding down the line. So, of course, that is something that I believe is worth, some measure of credit. So now the biggest loser. Who was the biggest loser for you this week?
Uh, I had a few names, but I wanted to narrow it down to one, right? Because I didn't want to go off too long. Right now, like at the top of my list, like superseding anyone else. Even though I tried to come up with other names just to have a little variety, I could not get past that. To me, right now, the Colts are the biggest losers after week 2. Is the fact that this new Wentz era hasn't gotten off to a good start. Is back-to-back losses right now. And that's just a component matter. It's just because it's not as if Wentz was really setting the league alight in these last few games, but you might have wanted to give him a little pass because it's a new team, new system, all that. But I know that they needed to get this together sooner than later because it took a big fire on Carson Wentz. This wasn't supposed to be we'll get it together in 2 or 3 years. The team is supposed to be built to compete now. And they didn't just lose, right? But in the process, they lost Carson Wentz. No, I saw the play. This is another game that I missed, but I saw the play that injured him, and I admit it was like an awkward fall on the tackle itself. But Ken, honestly, what other quarterback in this league but Carson Wentz could injure both his ankles on that one play? It just seems so on cue with what he has become in the last few seasons, right? He's just like a walking injury, right? And to make matters worse in this situation, I feel like I said, given the fact that they leveraged what little future they had to get Carson Wentz, because they traded like it was a conditional second and a third round pick or something, so for Wentz next year and the year after, something like that. Either way, and given the kind of I would say, for want of a better term, like character flaws that Wentz showed in terms of his just demeanor after the whole Nick Foles debacle, I feel that like they're not even in a position. Well, firstly, they don't have a good enough backup, right? And I don't feel like they're in a position to bring someone in right now that could seriously challenge Carson Wentz for that number one position, because then he would just be messing up his psyche. So it feels like this is just a lose-lose situation. No, they've lost him. He's like I said, he's been an injury. They wanted to take a chance on him. They don't know how long he'll be out. He's a day-to-day or whatever the case is. And they're already 0-2 in the division where all the teams can seemingly just go past and leave them behind. So, well, maybe not all, but but falling behind is not going to be good for them, right? So right now, I have to say that the biggest losers after week 2 are the Colts.
So it's interesting that you picked the Colts. I didn't have them necessarily as the biggest loser because, I mean, their division is still not the greatest. However, you do make some strong points where Carson Wentz is concerned. And let's not forget that I have been very nonplussed with Carson Wentz.
I haven't forgotten at all.
Carson Wentz resembles, for those of you in the Caribbean, especially who've been in Barbados for any extended period of time, you would definitely get this reference. Carson Wentz is like a wet soda biscuit. Carson Wentz is often injured, and as you said, who sprains both ankles?
I could not believe it. Not one, but all two, both.
All two. When I saw they said that he had ankle injuries, I was like, does he have multiple injuries? Because I know that if you have an ankle injury, even if you have like a sprain going one way and a sprain going another, you just said that you sprained your ankle.
Yeah.
However, Mr. Vance said before it came out that he had sprained both ankles. They said he had injuries to his ankles. So yeah, that's all the best to you, Mr. Vance. I hope you get back soon because your team really, really needs you. But my pick for the biggest loser this week, I mean, it should come as no surprise to you, is my Saints. No, the Saints lost that game 26-7 at the Panthers. And the Saints, I don't know. I really can't say what is going on with my squad because it seems like if everything that can go wrong with this team this season so far is going wrong. Our star wide receiver is hurt. Knock on wood. My running backs don't get any injuries because right now we're only running really with two of them.
Mhm.
We couldn't decide who we were going to give the starting quarterback position to for the majority of the offseason. I believe that that is now coming back to harm us at this point because one of the issues that we had in this game was communication between Jameis Winston and the line. No, I didn't see much of the game, but from what I did see and from the reports I was reading and hearing after the game, the Panthers were just blitzing constantly. They were just coming after Jameis
That's it.
and not having the reps with the first team because obviously if you're giving two quarterbacks an opportunity to trail to be the starter, you're going to have Jameis with the starters 1 week or this practice, and then you're going to have them with the twos.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
when you have a situation where you're in a game and you need to be able to communicate to pick up the pressures and identify where the pressure is coming from, which direction do I need to slide the line? How do I communicate this with my wide receivers and my running back so I know, okay, so you're going to step out and you're going to block this guy, but this guy is coming free, so my hot route is over there. You don't have that level of comfort because they don't have the reps. We lost the last preseason game. Now you go in to play against Carolina, who I mean, it's still the Panthers, but the Panthers' defense, as you have rightfully said in your biggest winners, their defense is legit. Their defense is looking a lot better this season than it has looked in the past. If there was a time to get the Saints, it would have been this week because apparently we didn't keep our focus. We didn't have our minds set going into this game because we had just handled the Green Bay comprehensively. So the expectation is then you're going to go in and you're going to handle Carolina as well because again, it is just the Panthers. It didn't work out that way. You can't take your eyes off of the opponent that's ahead of you and think that you're going to just walk in and the game is going to be whatever. You have to be focused. You have to play the game with the level of respect that it deserves.
Mhm.
No, I know some folks were looking at this game and making comments with regards to Jameis. The fact that Jameis threw 2 interceptions in this game, no touchdowns. He did run 1 touchdown in, however. But at the time when every interception, or let's put it this way, every interception is not created equally. There are bad throws where you don't see the defender, you just throw it literally in his hands. There are throws where the coverage, somebody makes a mistake on the route, so the ball doesn't go where it's supposed to go. And then there are the kinds of interceptions that will happen at the end of the first half, which is when Jameis threw the first one, and then at the end of the second half when he threw the second one, which is you're forcing the ball, you're trying to make something happen, you're trying to get some points, you're trying to get down the field. There's only basically the one guy down there, so now you need to have this super amazing throw, and your wide receiver has to help you out and get to the ball and make the play. It didn't happen. As the commentators often say when these things happen to all quarterbacks, not just to Jameis Winston, is like a punt. You're basically just trying to flip field position because you're trying to get whatever you can, and if you can't get anything, then maybe the other team has to start from deep in their own half of the field. So I have been very critical of Jameis in the past. I can see why these 2 interceptions happen. I don't believe I need to be as critical at this point, as well as just taking into consideration that Jameis so far has been careful with the ball. He's been cautious. And I believe that a lot of the negative plays, a lot of the limited yardage that he's had so far for these first 2 weeks of the season is because of the game plan. It's because they're trying to manage him and make sure that he doesn't just be out here just, throwing it up. And we are not the Buccaneers with the no risk it, no biscuit philosophy. We take care of the ball. We try to make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to go. It's still early in the season. We overperformed last week, but we definitely underperformed this week. So the biggest losers have to be the Saints. Now we're already down 1 game as well in the division. Now, if there is somebody that is supposed to have a moral victory. Consider that the loss that they had was maybe not so bad, and there's stuff that they can definitely take away from this going forward. Who would your moral victor be this week?
So I put a twist on it this week, right? Mm-hmm. Because the same response you had for your biggest winners, I also had, but then I decided to switch them to the moral victory. No, yet to me there was still the Ravens, and I guess specifically Lamar Jackson in this, but to me there was still a moral victory to be achieved here, even though they won the game. Like it didn't come despite a loss, it came with the win. Because, and as you articulated before, is like the Ravens have always been there and about since Lamar has been in the league, but they've never been able to get past the Chiefs. This was his first victory against the Chiefs in what, there's 4 or 5 tries now? Mm-hmm. So, and I think it kind of is the nature of the win for me, right? They were trailing. I'm pretty sure, according to odds, again, the Chiefs would have been favorites, if anything. The Ravens did not look like a cohesive unit on either side of the ball in week 1. And we know the thing is, you know how Lamar is in terms of his leadership qualities. So at the end of week 1, remember he was blaming himself because of the late fumbles that caused a turnover. You know that ended up resulting in good field position, and I think they had scored on it. The Raiders had scored and ended up taking it right. Mm-hmm. So he blamed himself heavily. So to me, the manner in which he was able to orchestrate the comeback and like even in the end, the willingness to and desire to go for that 4 down, to go on to not punt and go for it on 4th and get that first down to seal the victory. To me, that it was a moral boost that the entire team needed, because it seemed like everyone was buoyed by just how well, especially he was leading the team on offense. And I mean on both sides, offense, defense. It just seemed like the entire team's picked themselves up, and we know that he's one of the very vocal leaders of this team, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that as impressive as the win itself was, there is a huge moral victory here for Lamar, because he conquered those demons, and I feel like now going forward, I don't think he'll at all. I don't think he'll be complacent, but I think now he has a bit more confidence, and the team does, knowing that they can get the job done against Kansas City if need be.
Okay, so when I looked at my moral victory, one name that did come back to mind again was again the Saints, because the Saints having the come back to earth loss that they did, it helps them now to focus again going forward. And they showed some stuff, the Panthers did, that the Saints as an offense and the offensive line, they need to work on. But I'm not going back through that with them again. My moral victory this week might surprise you, actually. It's from the game last night. Well, when I say last night, of course, those who are watching this on Wednesday, we're recording this on Tuesday. I have to say that all the time because I keep messing up doing this.
You get hang of it.
Yeah, hopefully soon. Yeah. But in the Monday Night Football game, the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions have a lot right now to be not necessarily pleased about, because they're still winners on the season. But they played the San Francisco 49ers really, really close last week, coming back from a ridiculous deficit to take the game into overtime, I think, if memory serves me correctly. This week, they were putting so much pressure on the Packers with the scoreboard, not necessarily with their defense, because that game, for a while, it felt like basketball, because nobody was stopping anybody. But at least up until the half, if I remember correctly, the Lions were up 17-14 at the half. So if there were lightning strikes in Lambeau and the game had to get called off, who would have won? The Lions. The Lions are playing really, really good football in spurts. which is something that we've not been able to say about the Lions. The Lions have been the whipping boys of the league for as long as I can remember. This is a team that has gone winless in an entire season. But I don't think that this season the Lions are going to go winless because, no, we did talk about their head coach and how he's talking about the whole biting kneecaps thing. But he has that team playing really, really hard. And then when you look at,
admit, he does, yeah.
And when you look at the offensive production that they're getting from a bunch of wide receivers whose names we don't know, and then they brought in the GreenBaje backup in Williams to be their backup running back. He was running hard last night. DeAndre Swift was also running hard last night.
I'm getting more targets than Swift too.
There you go. Yeah. When you look at what this team has been doing, your boy TJ Hawkinson had a great game last night. And then when you look at Jared Goff, who we have been saying that, chances are when he's no longer with McVay, he's not going to look as good. But some throws that he put on last night were fantastic.
Yeah.
If he can get his head up now and survey the field a little bit more, he would have had some easier conversions on the fourth down plays that he went for, and they didn't get them. And there was one other issue that they had where working on time of possession. I don't know if you saw the game on which broadcast you were watching, but for the first half, I was watching the Peyton and Eli stream.
Yeah.
And they were talking about
time too, yeah.
And they were right. So you would remember then that they were talking about how that the Lions should have taken a timeout in the first minute after the 2-minute warning to help preserve the clock, but they just allowed so much time to just drift by that they didn't have a choice then but to kick a field goal because they didn't have any time to do anything else.
Yeah,
there are things that the rookie head coach he's going to get better, he's going to learn, and he's going to improve. The Lions are also going to get better, they're going to learn, they're going to improve. The Lions should be feeling good today. And to say that about the Detroit Lions, come on.
Yeah, I did it last week, and I'm not going to do it 2 weeks in a row. But I understand. Understand where you're coming from. I was impressed, and I'm going to give Dan Campbell a little bit of credit because I thought he was crazy. I thought he was just an erratic personality coming into this, but they are a bit more buttoned down. And to be fair, they do have some injuries on defense, or at least one with Okuda being out. He's supposed to be like their top corner. So in just like trying to make it a next man up kind of situation, they just couldn't hold out in the end. At the end of the day, GreenBaje has more quality on their offense, and then I guess the Detroit defense just seemed gassed. But I get where you're coming from, but that helps me to segue perfectly into my most concerning victory, though.
Sure, go for it.
Because you spoke about last week. I said the Lions because of the fact that they ended up bringing the game to basically within a one possession against the 49ers. This week, my pick for the most concerning victory is the San Francisco 49ers, Ken. Now, it's true that the Niners are 2-0, and it's also true that they're leading the division, right? From the onset, it looks very normal, right? But after almost letting the Lions back in the game last week, scoreline ended up to 41-33, and this is supposed to be like a defense that is like a top defense or something like that, in terms of front seven, secondary, like everything. It's supposed to be a complete defense. Let the Lions back into the game at 31. This week, they did their job, I would say. They only allowed the Eagles to score 11 points, but then the offense scored 17. So at no point in time are both of these units going to play well on the same day. How is it you score? Listen, the running game was almost non-existent, and we know they have injuries there, so you could maybe forgive them for not being like the best with the run right now. Okay, cool. But again, even you're always saying this about Jimmy G. Jimmy G he completed 22 of 30 passes, 189 yards. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. You understand what I mean? And And outside of Deebo Samuel, who had 93 yards, and mind you, one of those was a catch that he did most of the work on. It was a very good throw by Jimmy, but then he's the one that ran a very good route. And you know Deebo Samuel is a physical presence, so it is hard to bring that guy down. The fact of the matter is, like, you can't be scoring 17 points. It doesn't seem like the offense clicked yesterday. So I'm wondering if it is that they only looked that complete and cohesive because they were playing the Lions in week 1 to be able to put up 41 points. But then now in week 2, I guess the Eagles defense isn't terrible either, but it's about middle of the pack, if anything. And 17 points. Yes, you have injuries, but still, I feel like that is, I am very concerned by that. At 17-11 win over the Eagles, it just doesn't bode well for me. And as much as the record indicates that, yes, they've had an excellent start to the season, I am very concerned with what I saw in week 2.
So I don't have anything to add with regards to the San Francisco 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo, any of that, because it is too early. It is too early for me to be getting so down on them. So I'll leave them alone. But you know who has my pick for the most concerned event? The Green Bay Packers. I just got here and extol the virtues of the Lions. And you know why I could extol the virtues of the Lions? It's because the Packers couldn't stop them.
Yeah.
The Packers,
you're really struggling at first, yeah.
The Packers defense is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The Saints put up 38 points on them last week. And then they could, as I just said, it was looking like basketball. You come down the field, you take a shot, you seem to be scoring all the time, and then you just go back and you try to stop the other team. What are the Packers defense doing? No, we expected that the offense was going to bounce back after the shellacking that they took out of the hands of the Saints. Aaron Rodgers, 4 touchdowns. Okay, great. The fact that they were able to run the ball so effectively last night is really, really good. And for those who would have been rooting for Aaron Jones for whatever reason, be it fun or finance, you would have been smiling last night. However, the majority of the reason, especially this was coming out when Peyton and Eli were talking all during that first half, because the Lions were playing against the Packers and the Packers had Devontae Adams, they could not afford to leave their inexperienced corners without some sort of help. So they had to be playing with a 2 high safety look the entire game because you had to give those guys protection on the outside. Mm-hmm. If you're playing against a team who has more trust and more hope and more comfort in their corners, then you're facing a 7 to 8 man box. You're not getting that amount of space to run, and then you have to pass. So I am not convinced. I have not seen enough last night. Even though it was just the Lions, I am not convinced with what I saw from the Packers to now say, okay, Green Bay is back. Everything is good, and we can expect them now to rattle off to like a 14-win season. No, we are definitely not there. They need to show more. They need to do more to convince me going forward that they are going to be that team that we can actually trust going forward. I know we're talking about trust. That takes us right into who do you trust? And this week, who do you trust? We're looking at some quarterback situations because this week was very unkind to some signal callers. I'm sure some of your fantasy teams showed the effect just like mine did, because we had some real down performances this week from some big to medium name quarterbacks, and then we also had some rookie quarterbacks that struggled. Looking at you, Trevor Lawrence, and you, Zach Wilson. But we're not wasting time with you boys today. Today we're looking at the guys that are dealing with some injuries. Now, last week, in the first week of the season, the Washington football team, they lost their swashbuckling quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, to injury. Tyler Heineke came in, almost got them a win last week. And then this week, he found a way to win against the Giants at home in their home opener. So, AJ, do you trust Taylor Heineke to keep this job long term?
Long term, I do not. I would say in the interim. I don't know about long term in terms of like 2-3 years down the line, but at least for the rest of this season, for sure, I'd say definitely he has to keep it for this season, because while he might be a bit limited in certain of his tangibles, and in terms of ability, and how far he could actually take this team. At the same time, the fact that they held on to him after last year and brought in, held on to him to be the backup and brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I feel like Ron Rivera has been in this league long enough to know that if you're bringing in Fitzpatrick as your number one, that at some point in time during the season, your backup is going to take that field. So if they had enough faith in him to make him number two, then, because they still have Kyle Allen, not so, and Kyle Allen is now the third string. So if they had enough faith in Taylor to be the backup, and with almost, I would say, like 99.9% surety that at some point this season he would have had to play, whether it would have been due to a Fitzpatrick injury or Fitzpatrick just completely losing the plot. I feel like right now is not the time to take away that confidence that you put in him and go out and get someone else. And especially, like I said, after week two, as you said, after week two, he willed the team to a victory here in Landover. So, not here, I'm not in Landover, but in Maryland. You have to keep the faith in him. You have to keep the faith in him. So, I think he's doing a decent job so far of getting the ball to his weapons, mind you. And this is something I'll mention a bit later, but Terry McLaurin just had a career game in terms of receptions. And this is with Taylor Heineke. So I mean, on the flip side to that is that Antonio Gibson didn't have a very good game, but he still got the ball to McLaurin, to
McKissick,
JD McKissick. Yeah. So I think he's doing a good enough job. You can't, what I would say is he has to keep the job this season, and then at the end of the season, then you reassess to see if it is that situation where you can go further with him, if you have a good enough system and good enough weapons around him. But right now, I can't say that I've seen enough to say, like, long term, like give him a longer contract or whatever to be like the face of the number one signal caller, as you said. But he has to keep his job for this season, though. Has to.
So, Taylor Heineke, for me, I trust him, as you said, to be the starting quarterback for the rest of this year. Now, the question would be, does Ron Rivera and the football team brass trust him the way I trust him? Because I have been very high on Taylor Heineke from what he showed just in the postseason last year, when he stepped in for Alex Smith and almost found a way to beat the Buccaneers. And as I heard some commentators say, the Washington football team pretty much played the Buccaneers the best of all teams in the playoffs last season. Part of that is down to Taylor Heineke. So Taylor Heineke, so far this season, has a QBR of 104.4 between the two games. Against the Chargers, when he had the start, he had a quarterback rating of 119.3. Sorry, that was for week one when he came in relief. But against the Giants, when he started, 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 bonehead interception. 73.9% of his passes were completed. You just made mention of the effect that he had on Terry McLaurin, who had a career night. JD McKissick also had a very good night. There's nothing bad, really, that you can say about what Taylor Heineke has done. And again, this is still the NFC East. The NFC East, where a team could win the division at 7-10. So when you take all of that into consideration, he's just won the first game in the division with this team. I don't see how you take this team from him. At least not unless Ryan Fitzpatrick comes back and shows that he is a different quarterback to what he's shown for his entire career. And that is not likely. So I would roll with Heineke until the wheels fall off. Maybe next season you're able to go after somebody else. There's somebody else that comes available. This is the time of quarterback movement. So who knows what happens then? But for me, you gotta stick with the Heineke. So when we talk about Heineke, then there's another team who I was going to say was one of my more concerning wins this week. The Las Vegas Raiders. Because the Las Vegas Raiders, they almost lost their quarterback this week. Derek Carr, he is nursing the injury. And they just put their backup quarterback heading into week 2. That is, what's his name? Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
They put him on IR. So, if Derek Carr is not good to go this week, who gets to start, AJ?
Nathan 5-pick Peterman.
Yep, the Peterman is back. So, AJ, with the Raiders this week, they are going to be playing against, I had it here just now. They are going to be hosting the Miami Dolphins at home. And we're going to get to the Dolphins very shortly. But AJ, do you trust the Peterman to keep it together and keep the Raiders rolling if he has to start this week?
No. No, that's a short answer. And I want to have a bit more faith in them, especially since they're playing the Dolphins, who were just shut out in a game, right?
Yes.
But I still believe that if Peterman is in the game, the Dolphins have a very good chance to win this game. That is how little faith I have in Nathan Peterman. And I'm not going to go into a whole spiel about Nathan Peterman. If the Raiders have to field him, the Dolphins are in very good standing.
Yep, I'm sure that the odds makers are watching to see who is going to be the starting quarterback for the Raiders, because they want to make sure that they don't set a line that everybody jumps in on, and then all of a sudden Peterman is starting, and then the money goes bad for them. I also don't have any trust in Nathan Peterman. There was a stat that came out last week where Ben Zach Wilson was having all of his struggles against, who did the Jets lose to? Against the Panthers. And he had two interceptions in his first 2 passes or something like that. They said that only happened twice before in the NFL. And you know who's one of those people that had 2 interceptions in the first 2 passes? Nathan Peterman.
I'm pretty sure I remember that game too.
Nathan Peterman. And I mean, as if it was not bad enough, he was the quarterback for the Bills and struggled. I know he's going up against another AFC East opponent. Yeah, we could just move on from Nathan Peterman. But another quarterback who is also injured, and we know for sure he's definitely out this week, is one Tyrod, depending on who you ask, Taylor. Tyrod Taylor has a hamstring injury, and now David Mills is expected to be the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans, even though the head coach, he was teasing that they may potentially look to start Deshaun Watson because he is not on any sort of exemption or ban list. He could potentially play. So AJ, who do you trust for the Texans if Tyrod is not good to go this week.
Yeah, all of that is up to today. I was seeing reports that Deshaun Watson is not going to be involved in this team for week 3. So Davis Mills is going to start. And it's not like I had much faith in the Texans coming into this season. Tyrod was holding his own in the first couple of weeks. He had Brandon Cooks looking real good. And we'll talk about that. We'll get to that in fantasy because it will have some implications there. When we do, yeah. But however, Davis Mills will have to start though. Davis Mills will have to start. The Texans and what's the head coach now is Cully.
Yeah, David Cully.
He can say whatever he wants. Try and save face and make it sound like there's some surprise maybe coming now. Davis Mills is going to be your starting quarterback. So, and the Texans have who in week 3? I cannot. It's someone with a good defense. I can't remember who.
I have the list here, so I'll get it for you.
Yeah.
The Texans are hosting the Panthers on Thursday.
Hosting the Panthers. There we go. Yeah. All right. No. Yeah. It's back to Texan ways.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for Tyrod because there's nobody that gets run up off their job as often as Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor, to me, he would be a top half of the league quarterback if he could stay fit. However, as I just said, he is constantly getting chased off his job. So Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback before Josh Allen took over in Buffalo. Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback before what's his name? From the Cleveland Browns. No, I haven't get to Justin Herbert yet.
Before that, you're going back.
I'm going back. Baker Mayfield. He was the quarterback before Baker Mayfield took over. Then he was the quarterback before he got his lung punctured, and Justin Herbert took over for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now he's going to Houston. He had the Texans looking far better than anyone expected they would have. And now he's being scuppered by a hamstring injury. I
guess that has to be the hardest part about it for him, a non-contact, just trying to get out of bounds of the ball or trying to make a play, didn't have one, and then end up pulling a hammy, and you can see him pull up and the disappointment. I feel sorry for the guy for real.
I mean, the thing is, he pulled the hamstring on a touchdown run.
It was a touchdown run.
He scrambled to his right. There was nothing open.
I saw. I thought it was another play. Then my bad.
I'm pretty sure that was it because that's the one that when it was checking the highlights and stuff, it showed he ran in, and then all of a sudden, he is out of the game. And it does, as you said, Deshaun Watson is not starting this week. Davis Mills is going to start. It does not matter whoever they trot out there that is not named Deshaun Watson, they are going to lose this game. So when you put all of that into consideration, then of course not. There's no trusting of anything happening in Houston once Tyrod is out. And finally, last one for this week, who do you trust? We made mention of this before. The Dolphins, they have their own quarterback issues right now because the incumbent, he is hurt. He is dealing with some pain. Tua Tagovailoa, he took a hard hit in the first quarter of the game. He has a rib injury, but they said that there was no cartilage damage, so that was a plus. However, he is in a lot of pain. He may or may not play this week, and Jacoby Brissett is expected to be the starter. Now, as you just mentioned, the Dolphins, even though Brissett came in the first quarter, they lost 35-0. So, AJ, we made mention of this coming into the season when we talked about the quarterback moves and who went where and whatever, and they said that Jacoby Brissett going to the Dolphins, he may have looked at that as an opportunity where he would become the starter because the Dolphins don't seem to have much faith in Tua Tagovailoa. So, AJ, do you trust Brissett to keep this job long term?
Can I feel like you have more faith in Brissett than me, it could be too because he was at my organization, right? But no, I think he is decent. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, but I think at best he's a number 2. Like, he's not someone you want under center for the entire season. he was a good enough backup to Tua, I believe, without like you said, he may have hoped that he could eventually win over that spot. But if I'm Tua and I'm looking back at Jacoby Brissett, I feel like the onus is on me. Like I don't even feel as threatened as if it were like, honestly, I would feel more threatened if it was Cam Newton or something like that, or somebody else that was a bona fide starter. But Jacoby's a bona fide number 2, right? Over a lengthy period, I'm not convinced that he is a solution to anything. And I don't think Miami does either. It's a 1-year rental, and I don't see him being back next year, even if Tua succumbs to injuries, because like injuries and no start with Tua. You know, this man been injured all through his Alabama college life, right? All kind of if it wasn't knees, it was not knees. Let me not put the wrong injuries on a man, but it was. I know he had ankle, finger, hip. That was one of the bigger ones. So it felt inevitable that he would go down. But still, the Miami knows what Jacoby is, and even if he fills in for this season, if Tua doesn't work out at the end of this year, they need to go and get another quarterback. But Jacoby Brissett is not the answer.
So it's interesting that you said that you think I have more faith in Jacoby Brissett than you do.
It kind of just sounded so, which is why I said that. But I could be wrong.
You know, the thing of where Jacoby Brissett is concerned, for me, Jacoby Brissett somehow parlayed one game, one start, to get him traded for to go over to the Indianapolis Colts, who the same time they brought him in, wasted no time in getting Phillip Rivers to come as well. That lets you know that they didn't have that much faith in him. Right. And then they were not shy in getting rid of him this season either. He's gone over to Miami, and Miami, let's even just remember, this is the same Miami Dolphins that has been constantly been mentioned as a landing spot for Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
If we are saying that the Miami Dolphins do not have trust in Tua because they're always making these googly eyes over at Deshaun, what does that say about Jacoby Brissett? Clearly, they don't care anything about him because they're ready to relegate him to third string.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's true too. And I didn't even think about think about it like that, but yeah.
So no, there is no faith in Jacoby Brissett keeping this job long term. He does not even keep this job for the entire season. If Tua can't make it out this week, and he can't make it out maybe they put him on short-term IR, he's out for like 3 to 6 weeks. Whenever he's fit, he's straight back into that starting lineup. Jacoby Brissett had an opportunity to do something for 3/4 of this game, and they got beat 35-0. No, I'm sorry. There's no way that he is going to be any sort of long-term answer for the Dolphins. Now, that brings us to the end of Who Do You Trust? And of course, as we have looked back on week 2, we must look ahead to week 3. So let's just get a couple games mentioned here for the folks as we get them all ready to go for week 3. So AJ, what are your key games, or like what games are you paying closest attention to this week?
Well, I mean, I always like to pay attention to the Pats games. However, this week specifically has my interest peaked, obviously.
Of course.
It's you against me, so next week is going to be some fire for somebody.
For somebody.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so it would definitely be the Saints versus the Pats for this week for me. 2 one-on-one teams. You talked about the inefficiencies with your team. I obviously have seen some with mine. You know how little I trust the offense until they show me something.
Yep. And
we started a rookie, so is a rookie versus basically Jameis now seem to be almost like a veteran in this league, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm really interested to see how this goes, because I I don't think going into a 1-2 hole right now is good for us. Obviously it won't be good for you either. But in my division I think it'll be a little tighter. You could still end up in first or second in that division, and you get into that afterwards. But so that game mainly, and then of course the Bucks versus the Rams. That is the second game for me, because obviously you know how the Bucks started at 2-0, been pummeling teams. The Rams, to be honest, the Rams in week 2, looking at what they did, it wasn't. I mean, so it's not as if the Colts defense is supposed to be that bad. So I have to give them some credit. But a 17-14 scoreline, I mean, yeah. So you're literally like a field goal away from being in overtime against that team. And Carson Wentz didn't finish the game, right? So, yeah, kind of looking out to see what the Rams do this week against the Bucks. Supposed to be and also with that being said, let me say the Bucks defense has not looked the same as it did last year. So in terms of them coming up against the Rams offense, because Stafford actually has this offense running really well. Cooper Kupp has been off his leash and just back to like crazy stats. So yeah, those are the two matchups. Definitely Saints Pats and Bucks Rams. Those are the ones I definitely might be zoned in directly on. Might not put down red zone. I had TV vibes for that.
It is true. No, of course, the two games that you pick are two great ones. I don't have to add anything with Saints Patriots because, yeah, that it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to see how my Saints offense can bounce back. And then you, as you said, you have a rookie quarterback, and my Saints defense is still playing really good. So that is going to be a game that is definitely worth paying attention to. No, the games that I had on tap really though, because it's going to be difficult. Chargers, Chiefs. They're playing the same time as the Saints and the Patriots. This is going to be a good opportunity to see the evolution of Justin Herbert, how he is able to get that offense to try to keep pace with the Chiefs. And last season, they were a field goal away from beating the Chiefs as well. That is one. Another one that I am very interested in for a different kind of reason is the Bengals and the Steelers. No, I don't know about you, but I know we have not been very high on the Steelers on this show. We have had Justin Marvel of This Just In come in, and he has also not been high on the Steelers. The Steelers have not looked very good as yet this season. Big Ben has not been spectacular at any point.
We didn't even mention this, but you know that he's dealing with a pectoral injury now too, right?
He is he?
Yeah. I didn't want to stick it into when we were talking about the injuries, but yeah, apparently he's dealing with an injury right now.
I'm shaking my head because I have Ben on one of my fantasy teams, and he's going to be dropped as soon as they can get an opportunity to. But anyhow, so when you look at what the Steelers have been doing, the defense has been solid. The offense has been sketchy. The Bengals, on the other hand, their offense has been humming for the most part. Their defense has been so-so. So now you have a good offense going up against a good defense, and then two sketchy other sides of the ball for both teams. It could be a great game. It could be a snooze fest. It all depends on which offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers turns up and which defense for the Bengals turns up. But that game should also have some interest, and hopefully it should be good. And then, of course, just for a quick mention, the Bears and the Browns. The Browns have been running the ball very effectively, but as I made mention of before, Baker is dealing with an injury. He had a shoulder injury in that game this week when they beat the Bengals. Sorry, no, it's the Bears that beat the Bengals. The Browns beat the Texans 31-21. I know if Baker is not healthy, you know how much I trust Baker already. And then the Bears, we may have the potential start of Justin Fields because Andy Dalton has a bone bruise in his knee, and then he will be the next rookie quarterback to take the field for his team. And if he performs, then of course, that's probably the last we'll see of Andy Dalton as a starter, at least for this season, because the fans in Chicago, they definitely want to see Justin on the field. All right, so now that brings us to the end of all of our topics, and now it is time for the final thought. Final thought took a break for a couple of weeks as we had lots of other stuff to get to. So now, AJ, this week we have an opportunity for you to give your final thought to the people. What do you have?
Yeah, so this week I'm just going to be very lighthearted. I just want to let everyone know how much Ken and I really love fantasy football, right? But at the same time, we hate it. And Ken knows exactly why I'm saying this right now. Ken knows exactly why I'm saying this right now. But last night was one of the perfect examples of the love-hate relationship we have with fantasy football. In about 4 of my leagues, I'm currently in 6 this season, about 4 of my leagues last night, I had players that were involved in last night's game between the Lions and the Packers, right? In about 3 leagues, I had Aaron Jones. In one of the leagues, Ken, I actually had Devontae and TJ Hawkinson. And then in another separate league, so 2 leagues, sorry, Aaron Jones. And then in another league, Ken and I were battling because we each had one of, I had TJ, he had Devontae, and we were going neck and neck down to the wire, trying to see who would get this win. For me, I really needed TJ to have a better game than Devontae, and it ended up happening. All at so I don't know what the word I'm looking for here, but to the detriment of my brother sitting across here from me. I ended up beating him and going 2-0 in this league last night, but it was just one of those weeks that I had a really good fantasy week, right? I didn't win every league. I didn't win in every league. It's almost, with those all being in so many leagues, the odds are almost impossible to like go 6-0. It is really tough. But also with seeing what Aaron Jones did, last night, like it was just a spectacle to behold fantasy wise, and it just kind of buoyed me up and got me in high spirits, ready to discuss fantasy football with you today, kind sir. Well, tomorrow for the viewers. Yeah, see, I'm doing it as well. But I just wanted to get that out there today, because fantasy is such a love here. And in a couple of weeks, I might be singing a different tune. But last night was a really good night.
Yep.
Well, Monday night, sorry, was a really good fantasy night. So that's all I have to say. I love fantasy, but at the same time, I hate it.
Yeah. It does not even surprise me that that's where you decided to go with your final thought for this week. For full disclosure for the folks, when we were going into last night's game, I was trailing AJ by, I think, like 10 points or something like that.
Yeah.
And everyone was predicting the monster game from Aaron Rodgers. And I was saying, if Aaron Rodgers has a monster game, that most likely means that Devontae Adams is also going to have a monster game. So I did say early on in the weekend, as the fantasy games were going, that I expected this week was going to be a complete reversal for me as of last week. Because I went 4-1 last week in the 5 leagues I'm in, and things weren't looking good for me heading into even like the Sunday night game, let alone, hoping for a miracle on Monday. And it felt like if Aaron Rodgers knew that a Saints fan was hoping for him to give the level of production to Devontae Adams that he would have needed, so he just gave all of it to Aaron Jones instead. So you're watching the game and you're just like, come on, even if you give him one touchdown, I'll be a lot closer.
Yeah, I just was like, and you know that Tay is my favorite receiver in this league, right? So a part of me wants this man to succeed, but at the same time, I'm like, nah, not in the end zone tonight, but can't afford. When he dropped that, when Rodgers dropped that dime, that deep dime on him, right? Yeah, I was like, shh, this is it here, This is about to be the end. Like he two of them about to turn up right now, I was kind of relieved when it didn't come to that though.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It was frustrating. This week when you guys see the fantasy spot, you're gonna probably hear me complain quite a bit based on what happened this weekend. But anyhow, that is a great spot to end it for this week. We'll see you guys tomorrow when we have the fantasy spot on. As always, hit subscribe, hit the bell, tell a friend. The GreenBaje podcast wants you and your friends to join us every week. So as always, that is AJ. He is the Green. I am Ken. I am the Beige. We will see you next time.